And hello, Cara, my dear. It is, as always, lovely to see you.
Oh, it's always wonderful to see you, Catriona. I'm so glad that we're able to finally record another episode. It's been a minute, so I am very, very glad to be here.
And thank you to all those who left us some comments and appreciation. We loved that. It was such a boost. And thank you for your patience. We are back and heading for a beautiful autumn season, or so I believe.
I certainly hope so, yes. I thought it was wonderful, some of the comments that we've had about the podcast so far. And it's just really lovely to feel appreciated and just think that we're having discussions that are prompting thoughts and resonating with people in whatever way that happens to be. So that is wonderful. And I am very, very grateful. It feels like quite a gift, actually.
Ah, and here she goes dropping hints. Because, of course, there will be another story for everyone in this episode. But let's dive in a little bit beforehand. So when we discussed we really need to and want to do another episode, you, Cara, said, oh yes, let's do the theme of everyday magic. And I felt like, ooh, yes, let's. Not only because it is a theme that's part of my life very strongly and has become more so ever since I became a storyteller, but also because I feel like every encounter with you is so magical. Like all the things that have happened since we met and all the ideas that are percolating and magical things going on. So, yes.
That is so sweet of you to say. Yes, I think we were having a conversation, just trying to have a catch up, because we've both been incredibly busy in one way or another. And we had a catch up last week and you made some comment about all the wonderful things that happen and the amazing coincidences. And I just thought, isn't that the wonderful everyday sort of magic that we have? That and the relationships around us and between us to each other and to the earth. And isn't it a wonderful place to be?
So it is. And for those listening, I am just now, as we are recording this, I am in Winterthur in Switzerland, and I'm looking out of the window of my father's study. I've been given the privilege of house sitting for a week in beautiful Winterthur. And it's a gorgeous view, and I've had all week to explore the theme of everyday magic and the theme of how much more magic there is awaiting us if only we tune in. And I've done a lot of breathing exercises, a lot of meditation. I rose early every morning, went for a run with my dog in the forest, and there have been ups and downs. I went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows in that week. And all the while I was practicing noticing the magic. And if I wasn't, then I'd catch myself at it and call myself back in. And immediately, magic would return. And it was fascinating. So I'm very grateful that we're doing this.
Yeah, and I think that's a real thing about noticing, actually. When you're out for a walk or you're in any sort of situation, it's just noticing the things that are coming up. I remember being out for a walk last week sometime down by the river, which I love going down by the river. And I'm going to come back to that later, actually. But this particular day, I was walking along and there was a blackbird, which was newly fledged, I think. And it landed on the branch next to me and looked so uncertain. And I just stopped and had a little chat with it. and just, it was such a magical moment. This newly fledged bird finding its way in the world, and me walking along the side of the river and just stopping, noticing, having a conversation. And it lifted my spirits so much to have had an interaction with another being out in nature, out down by my beloved river. And just when I then set off on my way again, I felt so grateful that I'd had this interaction and that I hadn't come across as scary, and that we'd been able to be in the same space. And yeah, it just lifted the whole area. Like the leaves seemed more green, my feet seemed more connected with the ground. I was more in tune with the bubbling of the river as it went over the rocks and so on. And I just thought, yeah, it's those little everyday interactions that we can have and often miss as well that just change our whole attitude. And yeah, I think being open to the everyday magic is such a wonderful thing because it changes everything.
It surely does. And wow, thank you for sharing that. And it's such great coincidence, if you believe in such things. Synchronicities, more like. Because that kind of experience is exactly what I shared in my first ever episode of my German podcast, which is coming out soon for September 1st. Wow. And it's called Story Medicine. And I had this kind of an experience with myself because I was, as I said, I was really low, feeling, oh, my work isn't going well, and I feel stuck, and it's all so heavy, and I went for a walk in the forest with my dog, and I started exercising some stuff that I've learned from Dr. Kim Duramo, which is you start with the question, what if? And you actually voice it, like you say it out loud. What if this, what I'm feeling, can shift? What if I can actually fully enjoy this walk? What if I can come back to myself while I'm walking? All these kinds of sentences. And before I knew it, exactly what you've described happened to me. Like the colors became so vivid again. And I noticed the trees, and I was able to really connect with the trees again and just thank them for their power and their restorative magic. And by the time I got home, I had actually found exactly what I needed to record that first episode. Where before, I had tried, like, I don't know, I think I've done 4 versions and they all sucked. and I came home and I sat down and I just did it. And that is so magical to me, that is our power. That's what we can do. And I think anyone having ever made a real huge change in the world was able to ask what if. You know, things that haven't been done before, inventions that have never been done before, massive social impact that has never happened before. Like, what if? And I wonder what happens if we pose that question throughout our day.
Yeah, what if, and the imaginings. And that's why I think stories are so important, because stories allow us to think what if, to imagine into different modes of being or different thoughts and different ideas as well. But I think there is something so special about being in the moment and in your environment, in wherever that is, your armchair at home, in your garden, out on the street, in the cafe, wherever, and just taking that moment to think, what if I did this, or what if I was able to do this, and dream into being whatever it is that it's that spark inside you that makes you feel alive, that drives you forward and open to the possibility that actually those dreams that you have could be real. And they're only ever going to be real if we think, what if they are, or what if they could be, and what if this were to happen, and open to the possibilities. And I think that's, yeah, really the heart of everyday magic, is this idea that the world is full of possibilities. Completely, totally brimming over with gifts and possibilities and love. And therefore, if we can open ourselves to that, then anything is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And interesting, while you were speaking, I was trying to tune into my body, because one thing I've also strongly realized in the past few weeks is that the magic happens from the inside out. And it's not just thoughts. It's whether I can be present in the moment and feel it. And this kind of an exercise, like, okay, what if it starts a chain reaction in my physique, like in my biological chemistry. If I allow it, if I can practice stopping the old sort of patterning or the old default systems that I've been operating on my whole life, maybe. And I'm finding that I'm more and more curious about the sort of interaction between my brain and the thoughts I think, and then letting them sink in. And the what if exercise for anybody listening to this, if you do it, drop the pressure of having to answer that question. Magic isn't about answering, it's about opening to the huge questions that are out there and allowing answers to come that you couldn't even think before. I think that's what we perceive as magic, is something that, yeah, like a glitch in the Matrix, like something, that's bigger than I was just a second ago. That is more beautiful than I had thought possible just a second ago. And yeah, I'm just so fascinated at the moment by that. And as storytellers, what are the words we use? What are the open-ended phrasings that we can maybe drop into our tellings once in a while without the expectation of having to have the answers? Ooh, I need to know the answer to this or else I can't tell the story. No, you are there to raise the questions and then let them shimmer and let them bubble and let them spread their gossamer wings, as Cara said yesterday in a conversation, which I loved. Yeah, just let us go out there and tell stories that are generative.
Absolutely. No, just when you were talking and I was thinking about stories and the link between our minds and our bodies. And I think that's one thing I love so much about storytelling, is it takes our ideas and it helps us to feel them. I mean, for me, I feel a story physically, emotionally. It is in my heart, it spreads throughout my body. And the stories that we tell ourselves, I mean, this is the thing, we're talking about stories and storytelling, and yes, there's myths and legends and traditional tales, but everything is storied. Our whole culture and society and the way that we talk to ourselves is storied. Whether that's about stress, whether it's about jobs, expectations, who we are, how we look, how we hold ourselves, our place in the world and all the rest of it is all a story. Everything that we experience is a story. And I've had a lot of stories going on recently with me about my health, about my place in the world, about all sorts of things. And I was very fortunate. I managed to go and see a therapeutic massage therapist at the weekend. And she was talking to me about where in my body I was holding the stress. And just feeling into it, just taking my awareness down into those areas, I could feel all that stress and tension. And it was only by noticing it, I was then able to start letting it go. And I thought, yeah, I tell myself so many stories that I am not in my body all the time. So the stories are affecting my body, but I'm not listening to it. And it really made me think, well, actually, my body is telling a story as well. It's telling the story of how I am showing up in the world, what is bothering me in the world, what is going on, and I need to listen to it more. And I think so often for me, I forget to do that. And it is so good to just settle into, where am I in the world? How am I feeling? How am I being? How am I really showing up? Not in the story that I'm telling myself, but actually as a physical entity in this world that is connected through the air and the water systems and the earth to everything round about us. And are those stories actually helpful? Are those the stories that I need to be telling myself, that I need to be telling the world and actually taking in? Or is there a different way of being, a different story to tell, and a different way to engage my body in this reality?
Oh, how beautiful. Wow. Ah. And for those listening, it's become a thing that Cara and I, I'm going to speak for both of us, but we feel we really need to be in the same physical space for once, because we've been like doing all kinds of internet stuff, and again and again, it's like, I want to give you a hug. And that's part, like, I find that so interesting, this whole thing of all of us working on screen more and more, and we're in the virtual reality, and where is the body? Where is the body? And I don't know if you know that kind of feeling. You're scrolling Facebook and all of a sudden half an hour is gone and you have not moved an inch. Like, your body's just frozen. And I was fascinated. I just took 4 weeks off Facebook. My impression is that I have revitalized a very important part of my being. My body, I've moved a lot more, I've felt a lot more, and I've sort of called my energy back into my own system. And nothing against Facebook, I'm going on there again, but it's made me realize how much of the actual magic am I missing when I try to feed myself feeds. So that's been an interesting experience. And also I'm fascinated by this whole electromagnetic field stuff, because we are energy systems. Each and every one is a powerhouse. And just by dropping in and asking ourselves, how do I feel right now? We switch from the fight or flight, I have to get through my day, kind of I'm running mode, to, I'm actually just here. I'm safe. I get to breathe. And it's a practice. It doesn't happen overnight, because we have, for so long, we've been, conditioned to run. And the system that we are seeing crashing about our ears right now is a system that tells the story of you cannot be in the moment. You have to be there, and you have to be here, and you have to be over there, and you have to be in the future and the past, and yada 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 yada. And you can actually leave that story just by dropping in.
Well, I think I would like to invite listeners to drop in for a moment. I think it would be a really good idea to just, wherever you are, just take a moment to feel comfortable. Whether you're walking or driving even, it doesn't really matter. Just have a moment. Perhaps take a deep breath in. I'm not going to say for how long, because everybody is different. Hold that breath for just a moment and feel your body. Is there any tension anywhere? And as you breathe out, try to let it go. And then breathing in again and noticing where your diaphragm's moving, your ribs. Imagine the energy coming down into your body. Don't hold on to the breath if it doesn't feel natural, but whenever you are ready, again, take any tension and just release it. 3 is always a good number. So again, when you're ready, just whatever feels natural, take another breath and imagine drawing in energy, the energy of the world, the air, everything round about us. Draw it down into your body. Feel any last bits of tension, and then when you're ready, let them go. It's a very simple exercise to think about our breath, but our breath is what connects us to the world. Every time we take a breath, we are sharing the air that we breathe with every other organism on this planet. And not only the organisms, but the atmosphere itself and the oceans. Everything moves around in a cycle. The air and the water that is on this planet has been here for billions of years. And it is part of a system that cycles around and around and around. And nothing ever disappears. So every time you take a breath, you are reminding your body that it is part of that whole system.
It is, yes. Yeah. And also I've loved the path we're on, you and I, to also when we're interacting, to just remind each other. Take a breath. Especially when one of us is, distraught or asks the other to hold space for them. That's so powerful. I had no idea how powerful that is. And yeah, that's my invitation to listeners. Be brave in your interactions, in your relationships, to invite the person opposite you, your loved ones, anyone, to just breathe for a second. And even if it's just, if you tell them, oh, can I have a second? I just need to breathe. We all have mirror neurons, and it will be contagious. So, yes. And, Cara, how do you feel about telling some stories, or a story that you have brought, which I'm really looking forward to because it's one of yours that I absolutely adore. And I know that Cara told a story in the last episode. Please don't nail us down to the floor with, you have to alternate. We'll just do it by what our gut tells us, and I promise I will also tell some stories in the forthcoming episodes. So, if you're ready, I would love to hear it.
These episodes are unscripted, and it is about what's alive in the moment. And I think you messaged me about an hour ago to say, do you have a story? And I was like, I will see what turns up. And I had a couple of stories that showed up. But this one, when it appeared, I was like, well, of course. Why wouldn't it be this one? So, join me on this journey through a story. Tom woke early in the morning with the first light of the sun coming through the window. It took him a moment to remember, but then he did, and the excitement bubbled in his chest and spilled out of him into a giggle. It was his birthday. Can you imagine the excitement of being a small boy and it being your birthday? But then he stopped. It was his birthday, and he would have really loved a present, but it didn't matter. You see, Tom, well, he lived in a house with his mum and his 6 older brothers and sisters, and he'd never known his dad, because his dad was a fisherman who'd been out at sea when a storm whipped up before he was born and never made it home. And ever since that day, his mum had done everything that she could. She worked every job that she could find, mending fishing nets, even gutting fish, knitting, crocheting, mending things, washing, taking in washing and all sorts to try and make ends meet. But it was never enough. It was never quite enough. I mean, they had almost enough to eat, but it was a struggle. And they certainly didn't have enough money for clothes. Not clothes for Tom, who was the youngest, so he always had hand-me-downs. And today, on his birthday, all he really wanted was one little gift. And he didn't really care what it was, but he wanted something new to wear. Because all his jumpers and boots and trousers had been hand-me-downs from all his older brothers and sisters, and they were soft, and they were warm and comfortable and full of holes. And all he wanted was something that was just for him. But he knew it wasn't going to happen, and it didn't matter. Not really. And when his brothers and sisters woke and they piled on top of him, it really didn't matter at all. And they got up and they had milk and bread for breakfast, and then his mum took out a small paper bag and handed it to him. A present, a gift for him. Tom couldn't quite believe it. He carefully opened the bag and he looked inside, and he took out a hat of every colour that you could imagine. And he smelt it, and it smelt new. It didn't smell of his brothers and sisters in their home. It felt crisp. It wasn't soft. And he pulled it onto his head, and he couldn't quite believe it. His mother had gathered up every scrap of yarn from all her projects over the year, and she had crocheted it into the most incredible hat he had ever seen. Tom beamed from ear to ear, and he ran around the room, screaming and shouting and jumping up and down with such joy that you've never seen before. And then, well, it was time to go out into the street and play and let their mother work, because much as though it was his birthday, she still had to work. And Tom went out into the street and he ran around and showed all his neighbours the hat, and wasn't it the most amazing thing you've ever seen? There were 3 old fishermen sitting outside one of the cottages at the end of the row. And they called him over, and he went running over and said, "Have you seen my hat? It's brand new. It's just mine. Nobody else has worn it before." And they agreed that it was a very lovely hat with all its different colours and threads. And one of the men took a penny out of his pocket, and he gave it to Tom and said, "You should go and get yourself something else for your birthday." And Tom tucked it into his pocket and knew that he would give it to his mum later on. And he went around the village and he showed every single person that he could find his hat, because wasn't it amazing to have such a beautiful hat on his birthday? 3 older boys saw Tom, and they laughed and pushed each other and decided to wind him up, to make a joke of Tom's hat, because it was a very strange looking hat with all its different colours. And they laughed, and they called Tom over and said, "Tom, what an interesting hat you've got on. You should show everybody that hat. Maybe you should even go into town and show the mayor." The mayor, thought Tom. Wow, yes, the mayor would love to see my hat. And he skipped off, with the boys laughing behind him, not realising that they meant it to be mean. But Tom went all the way from his small fishing village right along the harbour and up into the heart of the big city. Up through the marketplace with all the people crying and shouting and selling their wares that he and his family would never be able to afford. But then he got to the townhouse of the mayor, and he reached up and with all his might he knocked on the door. A few moments later, the housekeeper answered the door, and she looked around, and then she looked down, and there was this small boy with his multicoloured hat and a big grin, grubby knees and trousers that were torn and ragged at the hems, and boots that were very, very scuffed and clearly didn't fit. And she said, "Yes, what do you want?" And Tom said, "It's my birthday. Look at my hat. I got a new hat for my birthday. It's the first thing I've ever had that was just for me." "Uh-huh," said the housekeeper. And he said, "Well, I need to show it to the mayor because he'll love it too." The housekeeper smiled and said, "Well, you'd better come in then." And she took him in and through to the parlour, where she gave him a glass of milk while he waited on the mayor. Now, the mayor was meeting with all the councillors from the town council, but when he heard that there was a small boy from the street there, he told the housekeeper to bring him in. And Tom came into the council chamber, and all the important men of the town were ranged around, and they stopped and stared at this scruffy little boy with his multicoloured hat. And Tom beamed and went over to the mayor with his big gold chain and said, "I'm Tom, and it's my birthday, and this is my hat. It's a present from my mum, and it is the first thing I have ever had from you. And isn't it perfect?" And the mayor looked at the hat and looked at Tom, and he nodded, and he agreed that the hat was indeed the most perfect hat. And before long, the mayor had called for Tom's mother to come up to the council chamber, and he ordered one of these incredible hats for every member of the town council. And with the money that she made from all those hats, she was able to buy Tom a proper birthday dinner. Not only that, but the hats became quite the fashion in the town, and by the time his next birthday rolled around, he had a parcel of clothes just for him. So you see, sometimes even the smallest gifts can bring us the most joy.
May I just say, how glad I am that you are dedicating more and more of your life to storytelling. Thank you for that. I love that story. I heard it once before when you had an online event, and it's so perfect. It's just like the hat.
It is perfect. And my daughter, 2 years ago, she actually made me a crocheted hat with all the scraps of yarn that she had left over from all her different projects. So I actually have the hat that Tom would have worn, and I just love it so much because it is just the most perfect hat. I did wear it out in public a couple of times, and my daughter was looking at me going, "What are you doing? It's so strange. Don't wear that." And I was like, "But it's perfect. Isn't it the most beautiful gift for somebody to make something for you because they know that you love it?"
Yeah, and I love the moment when the boys thwart him and Tom just basically asks, "What if? Oh my God, I can go and show the mayor." And it's just, yeah, and that's maybe what you meant before, like, stories make us feel the images that truly nourish and nurture us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think they help us to feel the possibility and the emotion behind different things, because yes, what if? Because in a story you can take those flights of fancy, you can take those steps, you can go and see the mayor, you can ride up and save the princess, you can do whatever it is, and actually, what if? Because in our own ways we can all do these things. It is just those voices that tell us, no, you can't be small, don't do that, or you'll get laughed at if you try, which keep us small and stop us from doing the things that actually we can do. We are all incredible beings that are capable of so much. And to have that childlike innocence and just go, actually, yes, what if I could do that? I could just go and do what is in my heart to do at the moment, and things could work out. And if they don't, what's the worst that could happen?
And how is the worst that maybe happens the best thing that's ever happened to me? Because you can actually play that game right to the very end, and the end is good. If it isn't good yet, it's not the end. Well, yeah, somebody said that. I forget who. Oh yeah, and it connects us right back to the role of storytellers. So anybody out there listening, if you have felt this calling, if this is something that you feel drawn to, please, please become one of us. Become a storyteller. Because chances are you are one already. The step isn't very big. But this time, on the planet, needs storytellers like there are fish in the sea. Tellers who can tell the stories that ignite these what-ifs, that ignite the endless possibilities out there, so that we can actually turn this thing around. Or, as I would rather put it, to allow this thing to turn itself around. Because it's all energy anyway. But as storytellers, we definitely contribute so much, if we so choose, to love, to peace on this planet, to that gentle pause that allows us to come back. So, without meaning to make this into a sales pitch, but if you reach out to us, both of us would be so happy to assist you. And it's a great passion. I can speak for myself only, but this is my calling. I want to assist you in becoming the best storyteller that you can possibly imagine, and even better than that, through connecting with your own heart, dropping in and allowing the stories to tell themselves through you. Because that's all we are. We are channels. We are channels and creators. So if this is something that interests you, please feel invited from the bottom of my heart. And it doesn't matter if you do it with us or somewhere else, but just please, please, please do it.
Yeah, we do. We need as much diversity and as many voices as possible doing whatever it is that calls for them to do. And I would encourage everybody to always do whatever fills them up with passion and tell their own stories, because we do all have stories to tell. I have met so many people on my journey through storytelling and through life whose stories inspire and stop and make us question and just make us think, what if? Because at the end of the day, there is magic in all of us. We are all capable of so much, and finding the support to help that come to full fruition, to life, to support and encourage us is great. But the thing is just being in your body, taking that breath, taking that step, and telling your own story, or the stories that speak through you, I think is just so magical. So yeah, absolutely. I think both of us would encourage and support anybody who wants to try and share their own story, their own message, their own sense of what it is to be a magical being in this world, and so on.
Yes, yes. And it's also here, the possibilities are endless. Like, I've seen some students of mine tell personal stories, tell their life stories, and become great at it. I've seen some students of mine just using the process of learning how to tell a story to become more fully aware of who they are and then do something completely different, which is also great. Yeah. But the process of allowing story medicine into your life is incredible. And it unfolds and it takes you into the other world, basically. And I think that's an episode I'd like to do. I'd like to talk about the other world, but yeah, let's keep that for a later date, because that is something to explore. Unwoven and yeah, whatever it is called in the different mythologies. Yeah. So, everyday magic. May you go forth and invite it. Soften towards it. Let it in. And then see what amazing possibilities, people, situations, ideas, and feelings await you.
Just before we start finishing up, I just wanted to talk about another type of everyday magic that has been incredibly strong for me this past week or so, and that is the one of friendship. Friendship and connections. The people in my life that have shown up, that when I have been in a low moment or I've been uncertain, have been there with a word, with a look, with a hug, whatever it happens to be, I just think is so special. And I think that each of us can be that everyday magic, that everyday friend to people that we pass in the street, either with a smile or a glance, with the energy that we project, and also in the friendships and relationships that we have, is just to show up, to be ourselves and be aware of what is going on around us. So I just wanted to say thank you to all my friends and people that have interacted with me over, well, my entire lifetime, but especially those people that are in my life at the moment, because every single one of you is so precious that I am grateful, and it encourages me to be a more complete version of myself as well. And I think that that is something that I feel quite strongly about at the moment. So thank you. Yeah, there have been just so many little things, like my friend Sarah wanting to go through this sort of reset journey because chaos seems to be enveloping so many of the people I know at the moment. Life changes, things happening, and so on. And I think just that ability, capacity to hold space for each other without judgment, without having to have any outcome, and just accept that we are all in a different place and that we are all trying to find our way back to our hearts, to our souls, to our bodies, and to our connections with the rest of the world.
Thank you for that. I wholeheartedly concur. And it makes me also think about the aspect of allowing ourselves to be vulnerable in the presence of others. Because there's no invitation like that to deepen a bond, to actually show the other person, hey, I trust you with this. And to go at it from that angle as well, because we've been taught, 2,000 years of a certain type of Christianity have made us, do, I don't know the English, how you say that, but look to your neighbor first, do for them, and then you get to love yourself. But it's actually, can you be your own friend enough to allow other people to truly hold you? Because we all want to feel needed, or maybe not needed, but we want to feel that we contribute, that we can hold space for someone, that the other person asks us to witness what is happening, what is true for them in a respective moment. And so, yeah, I'd add to that thanks. Thank you to all those in my life who have who have shown me their vulnerable side, trusting me with their tears, with their confusion, with their chaos. And also thanking myself, because that's become stronger as an energy in my life. I was unable to do that 10 years ago. It just wasn't possible. And now I can sit and be vulnerable with my partner, with my friends. Not always, but in increasing amounts. And that, I think, is how we create heaven on earth, is allowing each other to actually see our precious hearts, to feel them, and tend to them. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the true magic, right? That's one of my favorite words from the Bible, is where your heart is, there your treasure is. And that is so true.
I'm a teacher as well as a storyteller, and when I taught full-time in secondary school teenagers who have so many pressures and expectations piled upon them, and they're coming into a world full of uncertainty and so on, and often they would be looking at university courses or careers that you could see just weren't lighting them up. And I would always try and encourage them to think, well, where is your heart? What is it that interests you and enthuses you? What sets you alight? What is it that you can bring to the world? Where is your passion that you can share with people, share with yourself? Because we need everybody to be their own unique individual selves in whatever shape that is. And one thing that worries me about the way that our society at the moment is so often structured, or at least the expectations around our society are structured, are that you will fit into certain jobs or patterns, or certain ways of being are elevated above others. Whereas actually what we need is everybody to be themselves, and to be in their hearts and follow the treasure of their own hearts to whatever destiny that is that they are supposed to follow. Because actually that's what we're all here for anyway, is to be that person, to be ourselves and bring our own unique gifts and magic into the world.
Oh, I hear you. And I'd like to invite the magic into that thought and add that it is my absolute knowing, it is my knowing that we are headed that way anyway. Maybe not in this lifetime, maybe not in this cycle, whatever. But that's what our souls came here for. So that is the journey, and it's happening. And there's worry and grief, and there's a lot of emotions that come up when we feel into certain aspects of what is happening right now. And also into that, we can invite the magic, if it is just by breathing. Because then we don't add to that side of the scales that are the heaviness and the sadness and the grief and the darkness and the despair and the, I have to go here. No, I don't know who I am. I have no time to actually find out who I am. No. We can breathe. And each breath, I believe, is a feather on those scales, on the other side of those scales, and the moment will come. And my personal belief is that moment has already happened, but that's a whole different discussion. But the moment exists in eternity where the scales shall tip.
What a beautiful image. I love that idea of the feathers piling up and just tipping the scales. And everything that we do that helps to enhance our lives, our energy, helps to enhance the world around us as well. And so it is all adding to the positivity, to the hope in the world, and the magic that exists. each of us has different stages in our lives. Every change that comes about can be painful and difficult and scary, but actually, ultimately, it leads us to a different future. Just as the dragonfly larvae hatch out from eggs and spend the first 4 years of their life at the bottom of the pond before climbing up and reaching out into the skies and transforming into something different on gossamer wings. And that is a complete kind of magic. I mean, what? But we are all capable of change. We are all part of a system that is continually in renewal, rebirth and cycles. And I'm just looking at my tree that is painted on my wall opposite me. And this is a tree that I painted a couple of years ago now, actually. And it is bare at the moment. And I am wanting to just put buds and blossoms that will slowly bloom over time until this tree becomes covered in leaves and fruit. And I think it's a symbol of where I am in the world as well at the moment. And sometimes having little things like that remind us of where we are, where our journey's taking us. Again, for me, that's a type of magic. It makes me smile. And anything that makes me smile, as far as I'm concerned, is magic.
Ooh, am I magic then?
You, of course, you're magic. Yes, absolutely, definitely.
It was actually a rhetorical question. Yes,
sorry.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, and of course, I mean, there's an ocean of stories we could tell to that topic. And even though I wrote to you, I don't have a story. What did show up was a story from Switzerland about an old woman who lives near a glacier, and every night she lights a candle for those lost in the glacier, and it has the most amazing effect in the end, because when she dies, they light up her path all the way to the top of the glacier, and she just moves out of her bed and leaves her body behind and doesn't even notice. It just felt a little bit too witchy, magical, if you know what I mean. But that, there's so many avenues. And might I suggest that we return to this topic at some later time?
Oh, yes. No, I mean, I think we have, again, with all these topics, we have only just rippled the veil. And there is much more to be seen behind it or beneath, whatever way you want to look at it. And I think, diving into that area between this world and the magical fairy realm as well is definitely a topic I'd like to explore at some point. So, yes, thank you for that suggestion. So,
anyone listening, if you would like to drop us a comment to that end, would you like to hear more about this? We also, we really appreciate any feedback you have, any suggestions, anything that you want us to discuss, something that's been in your heart, in your mind. Please do get in touch, let us know. Also, we'd love it if you subscribe to our podcast. You can find both of us on Facebook, Instagram for myself. I don't know, Cara, do you have an Instagram account?
Yeah, I've got Instagram as well.
Yeah, it's all, you find everything, I think, in the podcast description. You find all of our various ways of how to reach out to us and see what we're up to. And thank you again for listening, for journeying with us and supporting us on our way. It really means the world.